Hey, what's happening? Sheil Kapadia here from Philly.com Sports. We have a special guest today, a guy who's not getting much sleep this time of year, Director of College Scouting from the National Football Post, Wes Bunting. Wes, we see you, we hear you everywhere. Is that an appropriate title?
Yeah, right now, not much sleep is on the clock, so.
Okay, but Wes has been kind enough to join us. We're going to break down the draft, obviously upcoming next week. And Wes, we're going to start off with the offense. A lot of prospects, obviously, tough to break it down, but I want to start in the trenches, the offensive line. Is there a guy, or how many guys in the first round can come in, plug a hole for a team, really have an immediate impact and not a big learning curve?
Sure, you might be the first guy that's asked me first to start in the trenches with the offensive line, so I like this already. But the top tier guy is Russell Okung from Oklahoma State. This is a long arm guy, great athlete. I think he goes in the top 5 picks. Another guy to look at is Charles Brown from USC. This is a seasoned guy who's battled through adversity, another phenomenal athlete. And speaking of good athletes, you have to look at Bruce Campbell from Maryland and Anthony Davis from Rutgers. They round out that very talented group. Trent Williams from Oklahoma is another guy to look at. And then 2 interior prospects, Mike Iupati from Idaho and Marquise Pouncey from Florida.
I got to ask you about Davis. I know when we did this leading up to the Combine, he was one of those guys who had different grades really from a lot of teams. What has happened to his stock here over the last month or so, and where do you potentially see him going?
Well, he's a talented guy, as talented as any tackle in this year's draft. However, he's young. He just turned 21 years old, and immaturity is the biggest concern with him. And whenever you talk about immaturity with a prospect, you know these guys can't play through pain, and they struggle to handle adversity. And that's the biggest thing that we worry about Anthony Davis with.
Be interesting, one of those guys to keep your eye on there. Definitely in the first round. But how about the later rounds? Is there a sleeper, a kind of guy who really might not be getting as much buzz, but a guy who can come in and play right away and have an impact?
One running back who I love is Anthony Dixon from Mississippi State. No running back in the country this year was asked to create behind the line of scrimmage more often than Dixon, playing behind a young, subpar offensive line at Mississippi State. However, he's big, powerful, good short area quickness, can make people miss in tight areas, accelerate into the open field. Reminds me a lot of Raiders running back Michael Bush. I think he'll be a late round find, a guy who can come in, potentially start at the next level 2-3 years down the line.
Okay. One thing I like about Wes's work is you are a little different than a lot of these draft sites out there, but you certainly offer a different insight. And one guy, Tim Tebow, I think you win the contest of having him sort of projected as high as anybody. I know in one of your mock drafts, number 9 to Buffalo. Still feel that way leading up to the draft?
I think so. We've heard nothing to dispute that at this stage. Chan Gailey loves 3 things in quarterbacks. He loves good athletes, he loves natural leaders, and you need big hands to throw through the wind in Buffalo. Tim Tebow had the biggest hands at the NFL Combine, has a strong enough arm, a natural leader, can move around in the pocket on the nakes and bootlegs. I think he's a great fit in Buffalo, and Jacksonville definitely has some interest there at 10. Buffalo right before him at 9. Makes a lot of sense that they pull the trigger at 9.
Obviously been a lot of buzz there since really the end of last season. Tebow stories all over the place. We'll see where he ends up going. Second quarterback, I got to ask you about John Skelton from Fordham. Been a lot of buzz about this guy, especially in Philadelphia. I know the Eagles have been said to be interested in him. What kind of quarterback is he, and where do you potentially see him going?
Well, he's a big, physical, strapping athlete who can get the football down the field. 6'6", around 245 pounds, elite arm strength, obviously from the small school, needs to polish up some of his technique. His footwork is a little raw at this stage, but after the top 5, Bradford, Clausen, Tebow, and McCoy, I think he could be, that 5th quarterback off the board sometime in that 3rd, 4th round range.
Being interesting to see if that's a guy the Eagles really are going to target. But last position we'll touch on, wide receiver, Dez Bryant. He's been the guy kind of talked about a lot. Obviously, we talked about Davis in terms of some other issues off the field or character issues. Dez Bryant, what's your take on him?
Well, you hit the nail on the head talking about Anthony Davis, because if there's a prospect more immature than Anthony Davis, it might be Dez Bryant. And he's a guy that, has an Eric Moulds type aura to him when you watch him play the game. However, off the field, he has troubles. Groupies are one thing you have to look at in NFL prospects. Who is he hanging out with off the field? He's already gotten in some trouble with Deion Sanders. What's he going to be like when 20 mils in his pocket? That's the biggest concern we have with Dez Bryant. The talent's there. How's he going to handle the adversity off the field?
We'll have to see who takes a risk on Bryant, but that'll wrap up the offensive prospects. You can certainly read Wes Bunting's work on the National Football Post. He's working around the clock, new stuff on there. It seems like every hour, so definitely check that out, and check out Philly.com Sports for all your draft coverage. specifically to the Eagles. We'll be updating our coverage, our special draft section leading up to Thursday. Thanks for joining me. I'm Sheil Kapadia.